Muy buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Mariela López, soy responsable por el área de Ingeniería y Geociencias del CEBIER. Les agradezco a todos por la participación del evento. La idea surgió por conversaciones que hemos tenido desde el ámbito académico, gobierno e industria, y la idea del tópico, más que nada como base de ejemplo con lo que vamos a mostrar, pero por la relevancia que tiene en Argentina, no solo el tema después de la ronda del 2019, sino también por los eventos que organizó en estos meses, últimos meses, IAPG. Por lo tanto es el motivo principal por el cual elegimos. En el día de hoy me acompañan Cristiani Fiorin y Luis Baczynski desde el equipo local, Cris desde marketing, Luis, mi colega, partner en el grupo de Ingeniería y Geociencias, los dos tenemos base en Brasil, y Sandra Merten, quien es la que hará la presentación. Sandra es geóloga, ahora la voy a presentar con más detalles. En cuanto a logística del evento, el evento está siendo grabado. Ustedes van a poder acceder luego a la sesión en nuestro canal de YouTube. Vamos a compartir después el link. Y de todas maneras, mañana o en 48 horas máximo van a recibir un link con algunas informaciones adicionales. Temas de logística, va a estar primero la presentación, hacia el final vamos a abrir a preguntas. Y lo que les pedimos es que nos envíen esas preguntas por una cuestión de organización a la sesión de Q&A. Es una manera más práctica para nosotros. Sandra, can you please move to next slide because I would like to read. Exactly, thank you. Como mencioné al inicio, va a ser en inglés. Sandra tiene base en Ámsterdam. Voy a cambiar ahora a inglés y darle la continuidad ya a Sandra. Sandra has a Master in Structural Geology Tectonics, voy a mover esto, and a PhD in Thermochronology and Tectonics from EU University in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. In her current role as Senior Product Manager at Elsevier, she focuses on the development of information and analytical decision support solutions and services to help answer applied geoscience problems in the industry and academia with a strong focus on the energy transition. Sandra, now this is for you, up to you.
Thank you, Mariela. Welcome, everyone. So let me move to the agenda. Today in this webinar, I will first give you a brief introduction to Geofacets, for those of you who are not familiar with Geofacets yet. And then the key part will be a live demonstration focusing on two key things. One, in Geofacets, I will show you how you can quickly find maps, seismic data, and other data for offshore Argentina, and then we'll also zoom in on a specific basin. How you can also discover potential analogs and just information in general for the conjugate margin of the South Atlantic, and how you can gain quick geospatial insights by the ability to integrate the data, so for example, georeference maps into Google Earth. Then we will move to the next part where I will show you how you can also do all what I described before directly from within ArcGIS. And so that, I will also show you live. And then, of course, we'll move to, if there are any questions, we'll move to questions. So let me start with the first, a quick introduction to Geofacets. So basically, Geofacets was created because we got a lot of feedback that there's a lot of data, a lot of information buried in scientific publications, but it's not always easy to find. It's not always easy to use. So for example, here you see an example of the Journal of South American Earth Sciences. An article like that, it can be lots of pages, and it can have a lot of data in there, like maps, like seismic profiles, stratigraphic columns, graphs, tables. And it's not always easy to find this information. Our research indicates from interviewing over 200 geoscientists that the time spent searching for and formatting geoscience information can really reach up to 80%. And yes, some of the reasons, some of the challenges that are experienced is that it's a lot of work to search through the literature, having to go to many different sources to find all the information that you need. And then also then formatting of information and data to make it useful can be time consuming. For example, think about preparing a map image so that it can be integrated into a GIS system, for example, for any analysis that you may want to do. So what if this time could be cut in half? And so what you see on the left is a typical workflow that we heard for such scientific information is searching for articles, then sifting through the articles, of course, reading the articles, but then also looking at the data and then having to key in data or maybe georeference maps to really use it in, for example, an ArcGIS project so that you can really analyze. And the idea of Geofacets is that we shorten the steps by making it easier to find geoscientific information, one by having it in one place, but also by the ability to search spatially, and then two, making it easier to use this information. For example, being able to integrate into Google Earth or ArcGIS, directly having the ability to download georeference maps so that you can use them. So looking at that in a bit more detail to give you an idea, where are all those maps, figures, and tables coming from? So at the moment, there are more than 2.4 million maps, figures, and tables in Geofacets, and these come from multiple scientific sources. So below on the left, you can see those sources from which the maps, figures, and tables in Geofacets are sourced. So you can see it's Elsevier publications, but also lots of other publications like Wiley, Geological Society of London, AAPG, SPE, Society of Exploration Geophysicists. And so, it's a broad range of content. And what we then do is we go into the articles, and that's what you see on the right. And then we identify, like, where are the maps? Where are the tables? Where are other figures, such as plots, seismic sections, stratigraphic columns, and we classify all that information so that it becomes much easier to find it and much easier to use it. And so that brings me to the next part about easy discovery. And so this classification and enrichment that I was talking about, we don't only do that for what type of data is it, but also we see, like, where is it from? So for example, what is the spatial location? So really adding coordinates, and then in the case of maps, we try and georeference. 70% of the maps is georeference. Of course, we cannot georeference all the maps. In some cases, we don't have enough reference points, or for example, in case the maps are not in present day tectonic configuration. I mean, think of paleogeographic or tectonic reconstruction maps. And in the same way, we classify by subject area, and so that then enables you to quickly search spatially, and I will show you more during the live demo, and to then also filter down to specific content types. But of course, you can also look for the more typical scientific type of filter, such as who is the author, what is the source, what is the publication year, which can also be, of course, very important when you're looking for information. And then that brings me to the last point about integration. So I mentioned it already, but the data are downloadable in different formats. So for example, the images, they of course can be downloaded as an image so that you can integrate it into, for example, a PowerPoint. And then the maps, they are available as georeference images for integration into ArcGIS, Google Earth, and then the tables are available as Excel files so that you can download and then analyze the data in Excel. And then in particular for ArcGIS and also Petrel, Geofacets also offers plugins so that you can do everything that I'm going to show you directly from within those solutions, if that's where you spend most of the time, if that's how if that's something that you use a lot. Then you don't even have to leave ArcGIS, for example. You can just do everything right from there. And so, that's just to highlight a bit, the Arcgis plugin allows really to then hypothesize faster, validate faster, and analyze faster. And I will show you also how that works in the presentation. Just some examples in which situations can Geofacets help. And this is just examples, but for example, to find information for a specific area, for a specific basin, for example, when exploring in a basin or when preparing for a lease sale. So the spatial search capabilities allow you to very quickly drill down to a specific area of interest. Another example is finding information on a specific geological feature, topic, to answer a research question to find analog. So for example, Cretaceous rift basins could be something that you're looking into, and then you're able to see globally where are all the results, but you can also zoom in on a specific area. Another one is finding maps and data to analyze specific characteristics, for example, of a geological formation, of a potential or of a reservoir, for example, things like depositional environment, porosity. And then another example is using geofacets to find maps, outcrop photos to, for example, efficiently prepare for a field trip or to virtually explore an area in case a field trip is not possible or not feasible at that time. And so with that, I would like to go to the live demo. So I will switch to Geofacets. So you should now be able to see Geofacets. And as you can see, a big portion of Geofacets is made up by a map. And that's, yeah, to really offer the ability to search spatially. So you can see here at the top are the different search options. So you can search by keyword, you can search spatially, for example, drawing a quick rectangle, drawing a polygon. And then, of course, there's also the option to do advanced searches, where you can search for a specific field, like for a specific author, for a specific basin directly. Then there is also here, you saw it before. There is also a news feed. This is powered by Mapstand, one of our partners. And so this allows you to look at the latest news in the energy industry. You can also search and filter via that way. So it's really depending on what you're looking for. And then you can see that you can also directly link and then find information, for example, for a specific area that is mentioned in the news. What I'm going to do now, we're going to focus on that first example that I mentioned. Let's first take a look at offshore Argentina. So I'm going to zoom in and just zoom in like that. And then I'll start broad, and then we'll zoom in on a basin. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use the Polygon search in this case, and then I'm going to draw a polygon outline. So I'm just going to really focus on the offshore and draw it quickly. You can, draw as precise as you want. This is, of course, just an example. And what Geofacets will now do, it will start searching for all the maps, figures, and tables that are available for this area. So let me just minimize this. So what you can see here on the map is the polygon that I drew. And then those blue bubbles are the numbers of maps, figures, and tables that are available for that area. And this is dynamic. So for example, you can zoom in, and then you'll notice that the clusters will be broken down. And so we cluster because otherwise you can imagine the map would be full with dots, especially for such a large search. And so what I did now for this particular search, we found almost 3,000 results. So that means we found 3,000 maps, figures, and tables from a big variety of scientific publications. And what you can see here, so this is always at the map, figure, and table level. So for easy visual assessment. You can also switch the view. You can, for example, say, I want to enlarge the thumbnail so that I can visually inspect the results and then get a quick idea what are the results looking like. But you can also say, no, I actually want like a list view where I can see the images, but where I can also see the source. And so this gives you, of course, the ability to then also see what is the source article, what is the caption, who are the authors, and where was it published and when. And what we can also see is that those 3,000 maps, figures, and tables are sourced from over 440 documents. So if you want to see the results at the document level, so this is articles, then you can switch to that view, and then you'll see that here we can see that this particular article has 15 maps, 3 tables, and 1 plot. And so this is another way of looking at the results. And so it's really depending on what you're looking for. If we go back to the results, so I'm just going to switch off the video to make sure that everything continues to work smoothly. So if we switch back to the results, we can start to explore one by one. So you can explore the results spatially by clicking on any of these clusters, but you can also explore all the results from here. And keep in mind that at the moment, we only did a spatial search. We did not refine for any particular content types or topics. So it's very broad what we're looking at the moment. And so you may want to focus on something specifically. So let's say that we're specifically looking for maps that show the locations of seismic surveys. And so for that, we can use the filters that you see here on the left. So what we can do, I'm now going to look for maps that show seismic surveys. And so you can see here, we can see different map types like bathymetric maps, structural maps. I'm going to just expand the list because I'm looking for seismic survey maps. And this will help us to quickly get to maps that show the locations of seismic surveys. And so you can see now we've narrowed down the results from almost 3,000 results to 230. And this now allows us to dive into the details. So we can see here, this map is of the Argentine basin. And then we can start to explore the results like that. What we can also do, we can add a bit more context to this because, yeah, we have the map, but as I mentioned, yeah, we want to focus maybe on a specific basin, maybe even on specific license blocks. And for that, what we can do, and I will just enlarge the map a little bit, we can use the overlay. So there's different overlays in Geofacets, and these are really map overlays. So what I'm going to do, you can choose, for example, to display the IHS basins or the Robertson basins, depending on which ones you use. There is the IODP data, so the International Ocean Drilling Program data. And then recently we've added MapStand to Geofacets, and MapStand offers a wide variety of data. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to switch on their basin layer, which is interactive. And so let me just minimize the results for a second so that you can see. And so you can see that now I've switched on an overlay and it shows the different basins. It also shows what type of basin. So we can see rift basins, pull apart basins, and we can quickly see what type of basins are located where. If I zoom in a little bit, sorry. Yeah, so if I zoom in a little bit, so these layers are interactive. So I can, for example, click on this basin outline, and let me just minimize the legend a bit. And then we can see the details. So we can see that this feature is the Argentina basin. We can read where the data are coming from. And like that, you can really gain lots of additional insights, and it can help you put the results that we just looked at from the scientific publications in context. And so like that, we can, yeah, like filter, we could say, okay, now we looked at the seismic data. Maybe you want to look for other data like borehole data, and you can really drill down and narrow down the results just by going back and forth with the filters. Of course, you can also add a specific term to your search. So what I'm going to do, let's focus on the north part of the Argentina basin. And before I do that, I'm going to switch on a few more overlays because I want to see also the different licenses. And then also the licensing around areas offered. And then I also want to see what accumulations are there. So this is oil and gas accumulations and boreholes. And this gives us even more context. So let me zoom in. And what we can then do is further narrow down the results. So I'm going to refine the Argentina offshore area to just focus more on this part of the Argentina basin. And keep in mind, this is an example, but you can, of course, do that yeah, in any place you like. You can do the same for another basin in the Argentina offshore, or also onshore for that matter. So what we now see, if I put back the legend, so we can see the different boreholes. We can see here to the north are a few exploration wells, oil and gas exploration wells. We can see that, yeah, not in this area, but here there is different accumulations. We can see the different licenses. Also, these are interactive. So if you, for example, want to know the details of this particular block, sorry, let me go back. If you want to see the details of any of these particular blocks, then you can just again click those and then see the details. And like that, you can look at the different areas and different blocks. What we can then do is, of course, also explore the results. So for example, if we want to take a look at those two results there, this gives us the option to then quickly see the results in detail. So before we just looked at it in high level, but if you want a bit more detail on this detailed view, you can see the source article title, the authors. We can see that this particular result is from Elsevier, but yeah, like it's coming from lots of different publications. And then if we scroll down a bit, we can see the image, we can see the caption. So this enables you to do a first order assessment of the result to see, is it relevant to you? And then the metadata, and these are all the metadata that I talked about before that enable you to do this spatial searching and filtering. Of course, I mentioned the integration. So if you find something that is of interest to you, you can just click download and then choose your preferred format. So if you, for example, want to integrate a map like this into ArcGIS, you can choose the GeoTIFF format. GeoTIFF with metadata also has the metadata embedded so that you can always keep track of the source. And there's also a KMZ if you want to open it in Google Earth, and I will show you later how that works. So basically, you can click any of these and then click download, and then you can use the data. The same for other types of data. So for example, here, if we then look at what else is available in the article, we can see here, if we scroll a bit further, we can see that there is these sections. Here you can see, we can see sections, we can see some stratigraphic information. If you want to enlarge this, you can click view original image, and yeah, that really allows you to see it in a much bigger form. So really the image as it was published, so we can see all the different, here in this case, events. We can see the seismics, also the interpretation. And so like that, you can start to explore the results. Of course, at one point, you may also want to know the context around this, because yeah, from the images, you can do a first order assessment, but you may want to also check out the abstract. And so that's available here. And then, of course, after that, then also really getting the context by being able to view the article. So for all the maps, figures, and tables in Geofacets, there is a read-only article viewer, and I will open it now so that you can see it. And this really allows you to look at the article page by page. Let me enlarge it a bit. So here we can see the source article. It allows you to read it, to navigate through it. So we can scroll to the next page and the next page. And so this is really to give you that context around the articles. There is, of course, also a link to the source. So that's view at publisher, and that will then go to each of the sources. So in the case of an Elsevier publication, it will link to Elsevier. If the publication is from AAPG, it will link to their pages. So yeah, then back to Geofacets. So as I mentioned, like we now looked at seismic survey data, but you may want to look at something else. For example, borehole data, other types of data. So we can just remove the filters. We could add a term, or we can say, okay, I'm looking for example, for sections and profiles. Then you can include, or you might be looking for data, in which case the tables could be really of interest. And then if we take a look at the results, and if I switch back the view to grid, then you can see by filtering for section profiles already visually, we can see that we found like lots of seismic sections, also interpretations of those sections. And so this can really help to quickly find seismic data. And so yeah, this is again, just one example. In the same way, you can, for example, look for boreholes, for photos, and for tables. And then also to show you, there's lots of different filters. So I now mainly use the content type filters, but you can also filter by subject, by basin, by publication here, or author. If I just expand that for a second, then you can see. And then also, of course, by source. So in this case here, we can see all the different publishers. And if I remove this again, then you'll notice that, yeah, we get the content type filter back. And then let me go back again, and you can see all the different sources. So yeah, with that, yeah, I hope you've seen this first part of how we can dive into an area. And of course, you can narrow it down further. I do always recommend to start a bit more broad and then to zoom in. So you could even do something similar, for example, at the license block level. What I would like to do now is move to the second example, which is more around discovering potential analogs. And with this, I also want to take the opportunity to show you how we can first start from a global view. And I'm just going to switch off the overlays for a second so that we, in this case, can start fresh. So I'm going to type conjugate margins. And in this case, I use a keyword search as a start. Of course, yeah, you may be looking for something very specific. Again, this is an example, but you can type any term you want. And then let me zoom out, because then you'll notice that all the results are located globally. And so this is all the results for the terms conjugate margin. Again, if I switch view to list view, then we can see here the results, and we can see why they were returned. And as I hover over, you'll notice a pin appearing on the map, which indicates like where the result is located. In this case, we're interested in the South Atlantic. So I'm going to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is, again, use the ability to spatially refine. And I'm going to draw a polygon again. Using within, which means that I'm going to look for all the maps, figures, and tables within the box that I'm going to draw. And I'm just really going to look at the conjugate margin here. So I'm just drawing a quick shape. And then Geofacets will start searching again for the maps, figures, tables that talk about conjugate margins and that are located in this area. And so you'll see, again, like where the results are located. We can explore just based on relevant. You could also take a look, what are the most recent results? And we can also explore spatially. So let's say that we're interested in this particular part. And we want to see, is there any information that can maybe help us view the location on this side of the Atlantic with this side of the Atlantic? And so you could do the same here all across the conjugate margin. So I'm going to click the result with this, the cluster with the 17 results. And then we can see here the different results. So here about the conjugate margins, we can navigate through. And so this can really help establish what is available for both sides along the margin. I'm just going to scroll through so that you can get an idea of what the results look like. And so in the same way, we could look at different areas. If I then again switch view, so I'm going to switch the view so that we can see visually. So let me see, here is another interesting result. So we're just going to move a bit across the margin. So now we move a bit more to the north. So let me open up this result. So here we can see worldwide review of transformed continental margins. And in this review, they've highlighted one example of a conjugate margin, which is the Falklands Malvinas, and then on the other side, the Agulhas. And so we can see here one map. Here you can see the map. It's available in georeference format. But if we then take a look at the original image, and we could already see this from the caption, then we can actually see. So this is on one side. It also has a plot with it that shows the distance and altitude across the margin. We can see here all these lines corresponding to the different profiles. And then we can see here on the other side of the margin. And so what we can now do is, of course, further explore the same way as what I showed you before. We can look again at also the article, read more about it, but we can also download the information. I'm going to, in this case, download the KMZ to first show you what you can then do in Google Earth. So I'm just going to download this. And then as it's downloaded, I'm going to open it in Google Earth, and you'll notice that the georeference map will automatically fall to the right location. And we can now see this map here in Google Earth. It's nice because what you can do is, for example, change the transparency so we can see how it aligns. We can look at the details, so you'll always have the source information embedded so that you don't lose track of the references. So here we can see the caption. Everything that I showed you in Geofacets is also embedded in this downloaded files. We can see the authors so that you can always keep track of the source. And what we can then do in the same way, we could download more maps. We can start to overlay them. So what I did already up front is that I also downloaded the map on the other side. So it's this one. So if I now go there, we can actually take a look at the other side of the Atlantic. And so we can see the map that is located there. We could do the same as what I did with the other map. Again, look at how it aligns. We can see how the fault lines are also visible on the satellite imagery. And so with that, if I zoom out, we can actually track here across the conjugate margin. Let me zoom in a little bit and just move this north. Then we can see here on one side of the Atlantic and on the other side. And again, this is an example. You may be looking for a very specific topic or for specific types of analogs. But here, yeah, this is to show you how you can quickly see across the margin to the other side of the margin. So that was in Google Earth. I now would like to move to ArcGIS. So I showed you before how you can download a map in GeoTIFF format so that you can integrate it into ArcMap or ArcPro. What I'm going to do now is actually show you how you can directly do what the search and filtering that I showed you before in Geofacets in the online application, how you can do all of that also within ArcGIS. So here you see my ArcGIS workspace. You can see I've zoomed in already on the Argentina offshore margin. And what we can do, so what I did first is also, again, to here get a bit of context. I got through Arcgis Online, there were some blogs available about the Argentina first round. And so I got that. And so that directly gave us some context. And so like that, if you're working in ArcGIS in your project, you'll likely have like lots more data. You may have your own blocks, maybe other data like the locations of existing wells. But yeah, this is just to give you an idea of how we can then within a project start to explore what is available in the scientific information to get more insights into a specific block, into a specific basin. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the plugin. So you can see here at the top is the plugin. And it allows me to do spatial searches, to do keyword searches. And again, I'm going to start with a spatial search. And this time I'm just going to do a quick rectangle search in this area. And then Geofacets will start searching the same way. It will start searching for maps, figures, and tables in this area. And so you'll notice here in the table of contents, I now have a Geofacets search result. So I have the different bubbles in the context of the lease blocks, of the license blocks. In this way, you can start to explore, you can filter, you can, for example, say I'm looking for a specific type of map again, or for specific source content. So for example, let's say that you're interested in the location of boreholes. So in this case, I'm going to take a look at the map type because I want to find georeference maps so that I can show you how we can overlay those into Geofacets. So again, it works exactly the same. All the filters are here. So you can see very similar to Geofacets. If I do view all, I get all the filters. And then I can, for example, say, okay, give me maps with borehole locations. So I'm going to include, and this will narrow down the results. So you can see we've really narrowed down the number of results, and you can start to explore. So using the identify tool, I just clicked it. You can basically say, okay, let me take a look at those two results. And then you can see the map, and again, you'll recognize it's very similar. You can see the source article information, you can see the image, and then the caption, and then of course the other information like the abstract, the metadata, and also what else is in the article. So you can see, you can scroll through, we can see here some nice stratigraphic columns. And so like that, you can expand the search for data and information. What we can then do is we can say, okay, maybe you're interested in this particular map. And so the same way as what I showed you before. So let's start a bit large scale. We can see here is some main structures. So I'm going to download the map, and I'm going to download it as a GeoTIFF file with the metadata in it. So I'm just going to click download. And in this case, I've configured the plugin to add the maps directly to my active map. And so you can see it's downloaded. If I click finish, then Geofacets will directly add the map to my workspace. And so now we can see in the same way the map is overlaid in my workspace, and I can start to analyze the data. Let me just move it to the back in terms of layers so that we can still see the results and the lease blocks. You can, using that metadata file, so if I go to data view item description, this will load the details. So again, like that, I don't lose the context. I can still keep track of the references. And so like that, in the same way, you can start to add, explore, read. Of course, also from here, there is a link to the read-only article viewer so that you can check out the context around the map or maybe a figure or table that you found. Like that, I already collected some maps. And so you can see here an example of how you can then build a project. So let me switch off this map. So here is another map. It's showing some Miocene channels. Another map that I got in the same way, it's showing the locations of a few wells. Again, we can see the part that is overlaying, in this case, with these particular license blocks. Then here, another map. So we can see, again, this is really covering the basin. And so like that, you can, of course, really, again, depending on the kind of data that you're looking for, you can really build a project, start to layer different data on top of each other, maybe analyzing by changing also the transparency in ArcGIS so that you can get a view on what type of data are there, or you may want to digitize certain features like certain lines, so that you can then use those throughout your analysis and interpretation of a specific basin or license block. So with that, I would like to move back to the presentation and just quickly summarize. So let me put it back in presentation mode. So what we looked at in this webinar today is first we looked at how to find maps, seismic data, and more for offshore Argentina, and then we zoomed in on the northern part of the Argentina basin. Then we looked at how you can discover potential analogs. In this case, we mainly looked at the conjugate margin, but of course you can also look for specific types of analogs. I mentioned Cretaceous rift, or you may be looking at specific outcrop analogs is of course also possible, really depending on what you're looking for in terms of analogs. But the focus of today was to really look at the South Atlantic conjugate margin. We looked at how you can gain quick geospatial insights by integrating georeference maps into Google Earth. And then we looked at how to discover and analyze scientific data from Geofacets without having to leave ArcGIS. And so how you can combine the scientific data with the data, maybe proprietary data that you have in your ArcGIS project, to really get that context around it, and making the best of both by being able to combine the information. And so with that, I hope that I've given you a good overview of the different ways how we can explore offshore Argentina. And with that, I would like to pass it to Mariela for any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for the presentation. I have some questions. The first one is related to cost of subscriptions. I will answer this in Spanish. Sandra, just one second. Para quienes preguntaron por el tema de las suscripciones, es algo que me pueden enviar un correo y lo hablamos individualmente con cada uno de ustedes. Es algo bien específico. There was one question, Sandra, related to the keywords. Do the keywords work only for the title of the articles or also for the whole content of the publications? This is something that Luis already answered, but I think that maybe is of importance for the audience. So maybe if you can explain about that.
Yeah, thanks, Mariela. Yeah, good question. So it's in between. So what Geofacets does when you search, it's searching the title, the abstract, but also, and this is very important, it also uses the metadata, so the enriched metadata that we've been adding to the maps, figures, and tables, and the captions. And actually, a lot of emphasis is put on those textual fields, because yeah, that is what enables you to find like the relevant maps, the relevant figures, the relevant tables quickly. So I hope, yeah, that answers that question.
No, thank you. The other question is related to ArcGIS. Maybe I can respond this, but maybe you can develop further after that. There are two plugins in Geofacets, but maybe Sandra, you want to explain more about that?
Yeah, so Geofacets offers two ways of connecting to other solutions. So there is the Arcgis plugin, and then there is also a plugin for Petrel. And then for Arcgis specifically, we support both ArcMap, which is what I showed you today, but also ArcPro. So also there are two different plugins like for each of those ArcGIS options.
Thank you. The other is related to the content, the PDF. What happens when this is content from Elsevier or from other providers?
Can you clarify that?
The access, exactly. If you can access to all the PDF, no matter if this is from Elsevier or from SPE or AAPC, how about opening this PDF?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Very clear. Yeah, so as part of Geofacets, all those read-only PDF viewers are available for all the content. And it's really, yeah, we also have to, of course, give you that context because, yeah, the map is a way to start. And the figures or the tables are a way to start, but yeah, there is context to it. And so for all the content that you saw in Geofacets, this read-only viewer is there. In terms of then the linking that I showed you, that's where it then depends, yeah, what type of access you have to that publisher or that society. But yeah, for all the maps, figures, and tables, we have such a read-only article view of the full article, yeah.
Okay, in terms of questions, I think we are okay. Luis, I don't know if we have other ones that maybe you already answered that are for sharing to the audience.
Well, actually, I do have one question for Sandra. Hope you're doing great, Sandra. Great presentation once again. What would it be your most attractive and differentiator feature from Geofacets? What does Geofacets offer that we won't find in other solutions?
Yeah, I think the most distinctive feature is the geospatial intelligence. So the fact that you can search spatially. So yeah, to also explain why is this important, it eliminates any risks of, for example, if a location term is not described. So let's say, so I'm based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Let's say I wrote an article, right? And I mentioned Amsterdam, but I did not say the Netherlands and I did not say North Holland. yeah, then you may miss things. And the spatial searching eliminates any risk. There are also different spellings. Of course, there is ways, you know, to handle that with synonyms, but yeah, you can only do so much in that sense. And then in the same way, the geospatial intelligence also applies in terms of then being able to use the information. So for example, you saw ArcGIS, Google Earth, that you can then take the data spatially, because that's typically, also being a geoscientist myself, that's typically how you look. You look at, in this case, at a specific basin, at a specific license block, or at a specific mountain belt. And so that's always how you typically want to zoom in. And so I think that is, yeah, what is really, yeah, the most the most important feature, this geospatial capabilities.
There's one chat question, additional question, which I understand is important. Just one additional question on my side. How many trip field plans have you developed since the pandemic?
How many different field trips? I think 7 or something, or
Awesome.
more. Yeah.
Awesome. And the question that going to the chat, the question is regarding filtering maps. How can we filter maps in Geofacets by year and by type of map? So how can we filter maps in Geofacets?
Sorry, actually by age. That maybe this is important, Sandra.
By a publication date.
No, actually by age. The question is from Juan. Because many times we see present day maps, but we are more interested in paleogeographic or structural maps and reconstructions from the Cretaceous.
Yeah, so actually there is 2 ways and 2 steps. So I didn't show that map type today, but one of the map types that we have is paleogeographic construction, exactly for that reason. And so the same way that now I filtered for seismic survey maps, you can also filter for paleogeographic tectonic reconstruction maps. And so then you'll get specifically those type of reconstructions, sometimes more paleogeography, but sometimes also really, yeah, the reconstructions with the plates back in the past, right? Like the tectonic plates showing in different places. And then, of course, what then can also help is, in this case, using keyword search, for example, Cretaceous. Like that will really then give you the Cretaceous paleogeographic reconstruction maps.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. I think that in terms of questions, we are okay. I'm going to add just more comments in local language. I don't know if you have any additional comment before I go there. You know, in terms of any additional comment you want to do related to energy transition or whatever you want. If not, I'm going to make some comments just for the closure.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mariela. I think, yeah, in the introduction, I hope you got an idea of the different ways. I mean, today we really focused on offshore exploration, but yeah, as Luis was also referring, like it can also be used for other applications, and including the energy transition, such as carbon storage, wind energy. And so, yeah, lots of different applications. And yeah, with that, before I pass it back to you, Mariela, I just wanted to thank everyone for your time.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you for your presentation. Un comentario adicional, hubo una pregunta con el tema del idioma. ¿tá? Cuando lo subimos a YouTube, existe la posibilidad de colocar los transcripts. De todas maneras, quien necesite una sesión especial por tema de idioma, la verdad que para esta sesión consideramos que en general la comunidad habla inglés, por eso hoy no adicionamos intérprete, pero cualquier necesidad puntual se puede siempre organizar una sesión. Y con respecto a temas puntuales, como dije al inicio, había algunos proyectos que estamos trabajando en conjunto con algunos. Vamos a tener continuidad de conversación con la red, con la RUP, con la Red Universidad de Petróleo en forma separada. Y por último, les agradezco a todos la participación. Vamos a cerrar la sesión antes. Van a recibir, como les comenté, un correo con el link de la grabación. y estamos en contacto, tanto localmente como el equipo. Sandra, como mencioné, es del equipo de Ámsterdam, pero es todo un equipo de geólogos que también están en Estados Unidos. Algunos de ellos han participado con ustedes en reuniones individuales también. Estamos todos a disposición de ustedes. Con eso cerramos la sesión de hoy. Les agradezco y cualquier consulta tienen mis datos de contacto y los van a recibir en el correo. Buen día para todos y gracias.